To finally end the Raccoon trilogy and hopefully get this audio mixing done correctly this time, we're going to end with a game that was anticipated as an epic finale to a trilogy of years in the making, only to end as a bitter disappointment to its original counterpart. Released on April 3rd of 2020, it arrived in an awkward spot. Its predecessor, Resident Evil 2 Remake, was released in early January of the previous year, and in December of the same year, the announcement trailer was dropped for the finale of the Raccoon trilogy. Now, considering how well received the second game was compared to the original, there was a few bumps, but it was not only a faithful adaptation of the original, but to the remake of the first game. It took everything great about it and improved upon it. So, when 3 was announced, myself and everyone was reasonably hyped to see not only a sequel to one of Capcom's iconic monsters, but characters. Jill Valentine, a character whose last canonical appearance was Resident Evil 5. Unfortunately, it was a disappointment. Set before, during, and after the events of RE2, the story follows Jill Valentine, one of the surviving members of STARS, and her escape from Raccoon City, an affair immensely more complicated by another Tyrant-class BOW codenamed Nemesis, programmed to hunt the surviving members of STARS. Assisted by a member of Umbrella's Biohazard Countermeasure Service, or UBCS, the two must make their escape from Raccoon City before they either end up dead or worse. Here's where things take a massive turn in direction. Going from the more slow-paced and puzzle-oriented with a bit of action spiced in RE2, there is precisely a handful, and I mean a handful, of puzzles that a child could solve. This game focuses more on the action element of the game. Going from the gunplay to the emergency evade mechanic, no longer are defense items a factor. Get grabbed and you'll take damage. What changes is the ability to dodge out of the way, and if you time it correctly, can even pull some critical damage. The original RE3 had an emergency evade mechanic, but it was tricky to properly utilize and was mostly hit in a panic. With this element, I can safely say they greatly improved upon. Like before, you can also get upgrades for weapons in the game, the handgun, shotgun, and magnum for Jill, and Carlos with his M4. Right, you get to play as the UBCS member I mentioned earlier for alternate sections of the game and have separate inventories. While Jill has an emergency evade, Carlos, he just punches things. As before, you can also combine herbs, gunpowder for more ammo, utilize key items to access new areas and items, the usual RE affair. However, things won't be that easy.
Are you shitting me?
Like with RE2, you have a tyrant chasing you. Nemesis is much more aggressive compared to Mr.X. Along with the ability to run, it makes him exceptionally more dangerous. However, should enough damage be done to him, he'll drop an item, whether that be a weapon mod or ammo to help you out. He's also the main antagonist of the game, so you'll be seeing him and fighting him for the majority of the game as the primary boss character. Compared to the slow pace and almost oppressing atmosphere of 2, 3 is much more fast-paced. How much more? There's an achievement that has you finish the game in less than 2 hours, just to give you perspective on how short this game is. Though the atmosphere does fit in some places and sometimes. The power station and the hospital stand out as the two that have that drip of horror. The power station having a maze-like structure that is dark, dank, dirty, solving a puzzle under pressure while being hunted. It oozes that serotonin I love. The hospital is quiet, almost unnervingly so, yet there are some of the deadliest BOWs there, and it feels like a desperate last attempt just to save one person, ending with an admittedly goofy last stand section where it drags out just a tad. Like I briefly mentioned, Jill and Carlos will have to work together in order to escape Raccoon City. There's a few twists and turns, and a lot to explore. If you don't want spoilers, go to here. Jill gets a phone call from Brad in her apartment warning her about Nemesis, to which he immediately attacks her not even seconds later, which leads from her apartment to a city street and then off a parking garage. Brad is also there, but that doesn't matter too much. Carlos saves her life from Nemesis, and despite Jill's reservations about Umbrella, Carlos seems like a halfway decent person. Exploring the city to get the tram online, we run into Murphy, and eventually Nikolai.
come on, don't look at me like that, alright? I'm not infected.
No,
No, wait, please!
Nikolai, a cold-hearted bastard who is more psychotic than your typical villain, but after doing a bit of legwork, experiencing a, let's just call it a moment, and meeting up with Nemesis again, we manage to evade him to the sewers and eventually to a high-rise before finally escaping off into the night. Though Carlos and pals have a different mission, going to the RPD to rescue a Dr. Bard for Umbrella who is vital in antiviral research. Later, we find out his location is in the hospital. Though during this time, Carlos finds out that the train was attacked by Nemesis and Jill along with it. Jill and Nemesis duke it out. Jill gets infected and Carlos finds a cure and the dead corpse of Dr. Bard. When Jill awakes again, she discovers she has less than a day before the government effectively nukes the city off the map. Heading underground, she fashions up a cure, runs into Nemesis again, and finds out Nikolai is recording her combat data against it for cold hard cash. After a final boss fight ending with a fucking railgun, Jill and Carlos fight Nikolai one more time before escaping just in the nick of time, and thus ends Raccoon City. Unfortunately, there's a lot to be desired here in this game, and the issues can stem from the opening itself. Here, let me show you.
This pandemic has spread faster than any disease in modern history.
Angry mobs roam the city, commercial buildings. Authorities are bracing for more rioting tonight.
He was knocked unconscious yesterday.
A citywide emergency has been declared.
The CDC has quarantined the lower Midwestern region of the U.S.
Commitment, honesty, integrity, these are the core values that create the foundation for Umbrella.
This is Chopper Delta, preparing to drop off at area E95070. Over.
What are they?
The production value and love that is in just the opening already. Not only that, but comparing the games side by side in sheer content, the length, the filling of the content, the choice system that adds a level of replayability, the whole clock tower segment gone, and Nemesis himself has been dumbed down and contained to a few areas. Not only that, but Nemesis in the original game was deemed a threat almost immediately, axing Brad Vickers to show that he was serious, and would, from the moment you arrived at the RPD to the end of the game, had earned the nickname of the Pursuer, hunting you down and making your life a living hell. Though, defeating him periodically would provide you with upgrades to help you out. A new handgun, shotgun, first aid sprays, even infinite ammo for a single weapon. In the remake, you have an upgrade system that is dumbed down to a few encounters, providing one proper upgrade before moving on to an almost background villain. And he wasn't as scary, knowing how linear the game really was. Speaking of, the vast city of Raccoon is broken down in a set of linear sections that barely offer any substance. The two major areas that do offer that substance is the RPD and the hospital, both of which are played by Carlos and not Jill. One of the major areas, the clock tower, is relegated to a set piece. No puzzles, no story, nothing, just a boss fight. And therein lies the grander issues that overlap everything in this game. There is no love for it. For $60 upon release, you have access to just the main story of 5 difficulty modes, grinding achievements to get all the items needed, no mercenaries, no alternate play modes, mechanics established by the prior 2 remakes that are nowhere to be seen, a lackluster story, and setup done better by its predecessor. You can see that there is much to be desired. I recommend this game, but not at full price, and honestly, I wouldn't recommend playing it for any amount of money. If you got it as a gift for Christmas, with Grandma being as hardcore as she is, gifts this to you. Be the dutiful grandson or daughter, and pay her back for this waste. Next time, we dive into Spain.
Did I jump scare you? Yeah, I bet I did. You coward. You make me sick. Your weakness is pathetic.